Hello and welcome to the BME Horizon Hot Topics webinar, a weekly webinar brought to you by the Center for University Industry Cooperation of the Budapest University of Technology and Economics. I am Borbála Senk, the Chief European Research Funding Advisor, and my professional focus is to provide support for the researchers of BME in their successful participation in the Horizon Europe Framework Programme. The European research area is changing dynamically nowadays. We organized this webinar to help you, researchers and research managers, to get acquainted with these new trends and concepts that define the European research ecosystem. With the growing importance of achieving impact beyond the academia, open science, responsible research and innovation, we are required and also challenged to adopt new ways of thinking about research. These new ways are stimulated and also incentivized by the European Commission as a prominent funder of research and reflected in the Horizon Europe Framework Programme. With these weekly webinar sessions, we would like to spark discussions, show you good practices and novel perspectives, and want to help you to tackle these requirements with confidence. And our ambition goes even beyond that. We would like you to see the values, find the benefits, how these concepts like stakeholder engagement, open science, or citizen science can lead to new and exciting avenues of high quality research. Our session today is going to last till 1:45 p.m. I'm going to give a brief context for today's topic, then I will give the floor to our guest speaker, who will hold a 15-20 minute presentation, and then we will open the floor for questions. Please add your questions in the Slido platform. If you are following us from horizon.bme.hu website, the Slido is embedded on the page. If you are following us via YouTube, you can find the Slido link in the description of the video. The platform for the questions is already open. You can add your question or you can upvote someone else's question if you like it. We actually opened the fun poll in Slido. Please let us know where you are watching us from. Thank you very much. Today's topic is open science. In the previous two sessions, we have been tackling open science from certain perspectives. We got acquainted with the open science program of Utrecht University. So we got an impression how a university incentivizes and stimulates researchers to get engaged in open science practices. Last week, we had a session about the new open publishing landscape, how the publishers adapt to this new landscape, and how the European Commission's new open access research, publishing platform, Open Research Europe, is set up and how it operates. Open science is a modus operandi of the Horizon Europe Framework Programme. It is more than open access. It means opening up the whole research process. It includes different practices such as early and open sharing of research, open peer review, ensuring the reproducibility of the results, and open collaboration with knowledge actors within, but also beyond the academia. Today, we are going to tackle these last feature of open science, collaborating with knowledge actors beyond the academia. We are going to deal with citizen science today, and our guest is Alice Sheppard. Alice is community manager at the University College London's Extreme Citizen Science Research Group. Before becoming a researcher, she spent many years as a volunteer on a very successful citizen science project, the first version of Galaxy Zoo. I'm sure that we are going to gain a lot of information about that project. And she was leading a large discussion forum on which people learned astronomy and analyzed different types of astronomical objects. From this, she developed an interest in what citizens need when acting as researchers and what makes an online community thrive and produce great science. I'm going to give the floor now to Alice, and we will get to your presentations and comments after Alice's presentation. Alice, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming. I'll start sharing my screen. and just put it into full screen. Can you all see it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfect.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Yes, I am a community manager at University College London now, but before that I was not really destined for academia at all, and that's the background from which I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to you all from the background of a citizen scientist. So I had beautiful objects like the ones at the top to classify by shape. They were all coming automatically from a robotic telescope. And that was an incredibly moving and wonderful experience, and it really set me on the course of my life. And I'd like to open this up to anyone who'd like to do it, anyone who'd like to enable that for anybody else. So the structure of my talk, you've heard the sort of background detail of where I've come from, that I was a long-time citizen scientist. I'm going to start by talking to you about how to engage people in the first place and then communicate with them once you've got them, and then go on to the more in-depth community building and how citizen scientists are your colleagues, and then we'll have Q&A after that. So before we start, we'd really like to understand why someone who's not a working scientist would want to get involved in your science project. Some people think of this as a marketing tool. I think of it as a tool to find out what people really need when they sign up. Most people sign up with some kind of interest in the science, but some people sign up because there's some kind of problem, a health problem that they want to solve. There's a large project called Stall Catchers, which is looking at Alzheimer's disease. They might simply want to learn more. They might think, oh, that's an astronomy project and I love the stars, I'd like to find out. And the main reason that people get involved is they believe in original scientific research. They know it's important. It's something that the general public really cares about, and they would like to contribute to it. So where would you find participants? It's not always as easy as you might think. It might be as easy as writing a press release or a tweet, and then people will come running. But a lot of people are doing that nowadays. It's getting quite popular. So it's worth making it sound really interesting and making sure that it reaches a long way. So social media is very effective because it's very shareable, but it's also worth going to the newspapers or your local TV station, perhaps write a press release. I don't know if you use sites like Eventbrite much in Hungary, but they can be really effective if you want to give a public talk about your project. It might be that your project is something quite local, something environmental, for example, recording wildlife or recording pollution. And in that case, you can go to the physical spaces where you will find people, for example, the local park or your local library, and put up posters or give a talk there. Obviously, COVID makes this a lot harder nowadays, but at least doing things outside is a little bit better. And it may be very well worth it to write to any specific community you want to target, any representatives of theirs. I think increasingly there is health citizen science, and there are, for example, discussion forums where people with the same health conditions can come along and provide support to each other. So there are all sorts of places where you could look. A good way to think of it is go to where those people are. Now, what does someone want to know about your project once they've heard of it and they think, oh, that sounds interesting? They might have a lack of confidence. They might think, oh, I like astronomy or I like nature, but I don't know anything about it. Can I still contribute? So it's very important to give them some friendliness and some encouragement to say, there will be tutorials, we can train you, and also to explain to them that science often is not as difficult as they might think it is. Some of it is really difficult. I find writing academic papers very difficult, but data analysis is often really quite easy and anyone can learn. They will need to know what kind of thing they need. Like, do they need the computer or any equipment? And is this going to be expensive for them? Do they need a faster Wi-Fi connection? And if you can design your project to make that a bit easier for them, then that is great. They particularly need to know exactly what you want them to do. Do you want them to just look at an image? Do you want them to write things? Do you want them to press buttons? Do you want them to write things on paper and post them to you? And very importantly, they will want to know what's going to happen with the work they've done. Is it just going to sit on a desk for a long time? Is it going to become a scientific paper? Is it going to lead to, for example, a policy change or interesting news articles? There can be many things that happen as a result of work, and it's very depressing if you never find out what it was. A tip I'd like to give at this point is just say very briefly in one sentence when you first meet with people what you want them to do. I really like what this wildlife app, iNaturalist, says. Explore and share your observations from the natural world. That's it. They don't give a huge, great text wall. And they don't talk also as if they're writing a scientific grant. Grant proposals are really important, but you mustn't talk to citizen scientists as if you're writing a grant proposal, because they just don't sound very accessible or interesting if you've never seen one before. So if you can make the task sound interesting, then people will come. With communication, you need to decide how to do it, what's going to work best for you, and usually projects use a combination of several. They might use social media, they might make a Twitter account for their project and put the results there, tweet about their progress, answer people's questions. They might decide to write a blog every week or every month or whenever there's some kind of interesting news, and they might email this out as a newsletter. It might be that they develop a proper website for every aspect of the project and the communication takes place there. This is a lot harder in terms of work, the work involved to build this. But it's also good in that people will receive the news when they choose to. They will come along when they're feeling interested rather than, oh God, not another newsletter in my inbox, I'll read it another time. The most important thing is, even if you haven't got anything interesting to tell them yet, then don't forget to communicate. Just come along and say hi, or say, this is what we're planning to do, or this many people have signed up, thank you so much, we're really glad to have you, or hello, this is my background, this is what got me into this in the first place. Just don't forget about people, because they don't know what we do every day as scientists. They don't know how long it takes to write all our deliverables and so on, and how many demands there are on our time. So it's very easy for citizen scientists to feel that, oh, they've forgotten about us, even though it's never true. And now my favorite aspect is if you want to build up a whole community. The image that I'm showing here, these are all genuine astronomical objects. Some are very zoomed in, some are rotated, but they just about make out the letters "Welcome to Galaxy Zoo." And that's something that Galaxy Zoo volunteers used to say to each other a lot. When we found galaxies, they were all different shapes and sizes, and we had so much fun with them. So having fun is really important in citizen science. It's not a waste of time at all. If you want to do artwork with the science, then go for it. So some things to think about if you've got the resources to build up a whole community. First of all, is there anyone in particular you're looking to work with? For example, you might choose to work with students. They probably know quite a lot already, so you're probably going to be fine there. If you're doing health citizen science, then you might need to very sensitively approach a specific group of people with a health problem. That's going to be a lot more difficult, but it might be very effective, and I think some projects are doing that. It might be people with a certain interest, for example, people who launch balloons to study the composition of the atmosphere. Or do you want to just go for anyone interested? Most science can be done by anyone, really. And if you think too much about, we will reach out to this community, then everyone else will feel excluded. So do try to be welcoming to anybody who'd like to come along if they can help. So you might simply put out a tweet or a Facebook post or a blog or a press release saying, are you interested in this topic? Then please come along and help. And that way you reach people as individuals. A fashionable phrase I've noticed increasingly at the moment is, we will reach out to the community, but it's often not said exactly who this is, and also who it isn't, who's being excluded. So if you invite anyone who wants to come, you're going to have to build a community out of all these different individuals. That sounds like a lot of work. It's actually a really wonderful thing to do. It's amazing to see them get to know each other, help you. The picture below is a wonderful project taking place in Germany. Lots of people were brought together to study light pollution from all the increasing lights, like people's garden lights or adverts, all these city lights that were making it impossible to see the stars and also difficult for wildlife, difficult to sleep, and so on. Different citizens used the skills to build up a light pollution monitoring app. For example, there was a lady who worked as a cartographer. She made maps, and she used her skills to create a map of Berlin and local villages on this app. So people will come along with skills of their own that might turn out to be very useful. So a popular internet feature a few years ago was discussion forums. I think they're sort of heading out of fashion now as we turn more and more to Twitter and TikTok and more sort of immediate communication. But I would say that a discussion forum is very useful for citizen science because people can start topics and come back to these whenever they like, rather than everything having to be immediate. And that is really a much calmer and more sort of thorough way to communicate. There's less opportunity for arguments and so on. This was the discussion forum that I moderated a long time ago, and it became the most wonderful community where people helped each other out all the time. For example, this lady, Julia, wrote this lovely tutorial. She found objects that people tended to ask questions about, and she provided all these examples, and she said, this is what they are, this is what button to click. Another nice thing was that some people had a lot of knowledge of software, so they could go to the website of the robotic telescope and investigate what it was seeing. And meanwhile, other people knew lots of astronomy or lots of chemistry. When these people spoke to each other, they began to make discoveries of their own. That is a talk that could take me all day, so I won't give it here. Many people began to do their own reading on the topic and sometimes wrote long posts and blogs. When we invited them to write these up properly, it was amazing to see it. For example, quite young children became very interested in writing or in science. Some people went on to educate people around them who were not involved in the project, and I was one of these. I began to give public astronomy talks, and really, in the end, that's what got me a job at a university. Other people designed many features specially for newcomers to help them out. And I think if you see someone doing this for your project, then do publicize this, showcase it, to thank them, to encourage other people to be this helpful, and really to celebrate what nice things people do for each other and for the science that you're doing as well. So finally, citizen scientists are not just newcomers who are going to come along and watch and then forget about you. They get really thoroughly involved, and it's good to think of them as your colleagues. They're going to need tools to do the job. They'd really like to know how they're doing, like if they're getting lots of things wrong, and indeed if it would help the project to tell them that. That might be useful. In other cases, it might be not so useful to tell them whether results are not the same as other people's because they're discovering interesting things of their own. Your own science will show that. They always need acknowledgement of their work. This might come as a link in your academic paper. Here is a list of all the volunteers who've contributed. Or you might just put a big thank you notice on your website. The thing they'd really like is to be able to talk to each other. They might have science questions for you, or they might need some technical support to report something that's not working. And this place would need good community standards, a good atmosphere so that people are not fighting, but rather everyone's helping everyone else. It's vital to communicate the results of your project so that people know their time wasn't wasted. And sometimes you might want to give people some opportunities. Just post a link to a useful article about the science that you think people would enjoy, alert them to any podcasts on the topic. And for the very, very engaged people, they might want to participate further, for example, be one of the people who helps write the paper. The 10 Principles of Citizen Science, a very useful document. I'm sure that we'll be able to post a link to it. That says one thing you should do if possible is involve people at all stages of the project. So even project planning, someone might have a really interesting idea that you hadn't thought of. And it's very disconcerting when this happens. And sometimes people's ideas turn out to be bad science or totally irrelevant, but it's worth hearing because sometimes people have ideas that people trained in the topic just wouldn't have thought of. And that's because there's all these different skills coming together. So thank you very much for listening. I hope I'm going to pronounce this right, Köszönöm. And I want to alert you to 2 courses that I've been involved in producing in the last 6 months or so. One of the projects that UCL is involved in, EU Citizen Science, is a platform for people to learn about citizen science, and there's various short courses on it. As you see, one of them is in Hungarian. It's a general introduction to the topic. And if you found this presentation interesting, my one is on volunteer management. So do please check it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alice. Szívesen. Thank you very much for your research into the Hungarian vocabulary. We have received quite many questions, and I am going to share my Slido screen now. Just a moment. Okay. You see it, right? Can I get a confirmation for that? Okay.
Yes,
great.
Yep, looks good. I like these.
Yeah, let us just take a glimpse at the poll. So which city is the audience from? Let's see. Okay, so Budapest, Debrecen, Herzegovina, Stockholm. So please share with us where you are following the session from. Okay, so and now let's see the questions. I think that before we go to this most popular one, I will start with this question. Can you tell us a bit about Galaxy Zoo? What was the project about and who did you manage to engage?
It would help to unmute myself, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So Galaxy Zoo was started back in 2007, and sorry, I obviously didn't make it clear earlier. It was a project to analyze astronomical objects that were seen through a robotic telescope. And this telescope was not really run by people. It just sort of did what we call a sweep of the sky, just going back and forth to make a huge map. And there were some scientists in Oxford who were looking at these galaxies, and they had various hypotheses about them, like what made them into the shapes they were and what their evolution process was. But because this telescope had imaged millions of objects, they couldn't go through them all by themselves. So a galaxy might be a spiral shape or what we call an elliptical, which is basically a rugby ball shape, a sort of oval. It might be 2 galaxies colliding in a merger and a few other subtypes that I won't spend half an hour going into now. So they wanted people to just sort of work out what shape each one was, and human eyes do that so much better than a computer, and sort of make a great big map of the sky and what shapes were where and what shape corresponded with what color, what energy output. So they provided an interface with some buttons. Then you saw the image and you click the button, and it's still there, but much more complicated. They ask you lots of questions about each one. So who they managed to engage, I don't know, because I wasn't on the team. I was just a volunteer, but I was asked to be community leader because I got very involved in it early on, and I'd got to know one of the scientists on it. And they've written some nice blogs on exactly who the Galaxy Zoo people are, and they've found that unlike a lot of citizen science, Galaxy Zoo tended to be mostly men. So come on, women, we're very good at astronomy. Don't be stereotypical. That's what I say.
Absolutely, thank you. how do you ensure that these findings are usable? How can you validate the results of citizen scientists?
Brilliant question. Well, one way you can do it is to show 10 people or 20 people the same image. And if they all click very much the same thing, you can be sure that, yeah, it probably is that. And anyone can make a mistake, no matter how great a scientist you are. And for other things where you sort of need to know that someone has got something right. For example, the humanitarian open street map where someone is mapping roads to a village that might be in trouble, then it's worth it in the early days, get someone else, get an expert to look at their work and tell them if they've gone wrong somewhere. So really, I think a lot of it is sort of community support. Some of it is automated, but really if you can check something automatically, then you don't need citizen scientists anyway. So usually it's checking people against each other.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The next question we received from the audience is, are there fields of science which you think is not suitable for citizen science? Cancer research, nuclear physics, how can those fields be the base of citizen science?
I think nuclear physics with things like the giant CERN instruments and so on, I've never heard of citizen science taking place in that. So I would agree that's not a suitable field. It's definitely worth thinking, like, is citizen science really the best way to go here for all your projects? For cancer research, there are some. It could be people reporting on symptoms over a time, so sort of like medical trials. Another thing that's happened is a project called Cell Slider, which is also part of the Zooniverse, a sister project of Galaxy Zoo, where people are shown slides of cells and they're asked to mark features. And again, this definitely needs proper validation. But I think cancer research is okay, but yeah, definitely not everything.
Yeah, thank you. How do you keep, that's a tricky one. How do you keep right time management as a researcher for these great activities?
I have no idea. I'm bad enough at my own time management. I think that I don't know how the Zooniverse staff are doing now, but I know that in the early days they were horribly pressed for time, and in fact they were getting 20,000 emails a day, and that's why they set up the discussion forum. But I'm afraid I can't really answer that.
Mm-hmm. It is also very interesting to approach this question from the angle that in the Horizon Europe framework program, collaborating with citizens, opening up research is very emphasized requirement. So we would really like to do this, but of course not all projects can have community managers. So it is really important to find the right balance between
definitely.
Yeah, so to open the door for citizen science activities, but still not to get lost in this whole bunch of data and these very interesting activities nonetheless.
I agree. I would like to offer one tip here, and that's so many projects last only 3 years. But for a very engaged citizen scientist, their interest will last a lot longer than that. So if you see that someone was really good in one project and then a similar project comes along, then go to that person and say, would you like to be our community manager?
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Thank you. That is a very useful tip. Can you mention some examples how to phrase these tasks in an interesting manner? I think that this question refers to the part of your presentation when you mentioned that we have to formulate these questions in a way that it would evoke the interest of citizens.
Oh yes, absolutely. Like iNaturalist saying, explore and share your observations from the natural world. Gosh, some examples. This is like trying to remember another language. My brain goes blank. I'm terribly sorry. Give me a moment.
No problem. Just think about it.
Yeah. I mean, really ask the question in the simplest manner. For example, what do you see in this image, and provide examples of what people might see. Or, for example, you might ask something quite vague like, how is the universe evolving? And then have a button where people can go and find out. And it is okay to use jargon as long as you explain it. So you don't have to put it all in baby talk, but also don't make it sound like a Horizon 2020 deliverable.
Absolutely. Okay, the next question. Are you familiar with any interesting life science project with a working citizen science track, basically?
Oh, life science means biology, doesn't it? So ecology and nature and wildlife, citizen science is mostly things like that. So yes, there are hundreds, and iNaturalist is probably one of the most well known. If you also go to Zooniverse or to SciStarter and just put biology or life science in the search box, you're going to find lots of them. I could do that now if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. While you are doing that, I can mention a Hungarian example. I just came across like 2 days ago in one of the newspapers that which is called Tick Monitor, and I think that it was the researchers of the Center for Ecology Research who set up this project, and they wanted to collect observations from citizens, from farmers, from dog owners or horse owners, whether they can identify new types of ticks in the fur of the animals. And they actually set up an application, a mobile application, to do that, and then you could share your data. And there was like an infographics where in Hungary those new forms of ticks or the new species were identified. So this is like I think it is a very good example of a life science, citizen science project. Did you manage to find it in the meanwhile, and would you like to share your screen?
Sure. So I'm going to just...
Yeah, I'm going to unshare my screen first.
Okay. Good point.
Yeah, now it's yours.
Right, so here we are. I'm in the Zooniverse at the moment, and I clicked on projects. There are a lot. And there's a big scroll bar. There's one for biology and another for nature. So you're definitely going to find a lot of life sciences. So there's lots that are about wildlife. Prickly Pear Project, I think that's some kind of plant, not that wonderful horned creature. Yeah, so you might be looking at little birds or at quite zoomed in on the human body, our cells and lymph nodes. I don't know if there's any ones directed at cancer at the moment. Oh, and not all of them are visual as well. There's some where you're listening to the sounds that whales make. So etch a cell. This is one I like because it has this piece of jargon, the endoplasmic reticulum. I learnt about that in biology at school when I was 16, and I thought, what on earth is that? And I've never remembered what it is. And it doesn't tell you what it is immediately, but as soon as you click learn more, this is nice. This helps with one of the earlier questions, I think. Who are we? What are we studying and why? Just phrase the big questions really simply. So it will show you this interface of a cell, and I think you're supposed to mark the features on it. Color in cells for science. So that's just one example, really.
Thank you. And I actually saw a social science project there, which was pretty interesting. It was about an old diary, a handwritten diary from the 16th century, and the citizens were requested to identify words and sentences in the long diary. Yes. So I think a pretty fun topic.
Yeah, yeah. Transcribing is really popular. I'm not very good at it because I'm not very good at reading handwriting. But there's been a long-standing one of reading old ships' records. They were recording the weather, and because we knew where the ship was and in what year, then we can make past records of the weather over the centuries. And that lets us do lots of climate science and even aurora science.
Okay, so let's see the questions from the audience which are coming. Yeah, this sounds very time consuming if one wants to do it well. What helps you to predict the results will be worth it?
I can't give you a sort of proper peer-reviewed answer, but I do try to answer this one in the mini course I wrote, where I invite the person studying the course to consider whether the project should have a discussion forum. It depends on the data, what people will be doing it, and is it easily shareable? For example, if it's just a lot of numbers, then that's probably not going to be easy to share. But if it's visually beautiful or complicated, people will want to sort of discuss each other's work. If the answers are not just yes or no, if the answers are yes or no and obviously right and wrong, then there's not much to discuss. And then, yeah, you're not going to get much community involvement. But if there is a lot to talk about, if there's sort of different grades of answers and lots of sort of side projects, I guess, then that's going to be something it's worth talking about. It also depends how long your project will be. If it's going to be for 2 weeks, then yeah, it's definitely not worth building something for that. If it's going to last many years, and if you're getting lots and lots of questions emailed to you anyway, and you think, well, I could actually stop this happening by providing a discussion forum and let people answer each other's questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And the next one is, we've partly touched upon it, but I think it's a very relevant one, so I would like to raise it again. So citizen science now have to be included in big EU grant applications. How to do that in fields which are less suitable for citizen science?
I honestly don't know. I'm sorry. What do you think?
Well, I think that there are other ways to collaborate with knowledge actors outside the academia than citizen science as well. So citizen science, of course, is not suitable for all types of projects. Let's say, for example, a project that is about a technology development or a large-scale demonstrator of a technology. Of course, citizen science is not an integral part, or cannot be, or very hardly can be an integral part of it. I think that the requirement by the Commission is that we have to adopt this thinking. So we have to think in this quadruple helix approach. We have to step outside the academia and engage with the stakeholders. And citizen science is a very useful tool in that. But if we cannot have citizen science activities, we can have other activities with which we can engage citizens. We can communicate, or not only we can, but we have to communicate to the citizens. We have to make sure that they know why we are doing research and they understand the reasons why. So that would be my answer for that.
Yes, I agree entirely. Thank you. You said that so much better than I could. So I agree that not all science is suitable for citizen science, and it would be very silly to try to force citizen science on everybody, because it's a wonderful thing, and if you force it, then it will stop being a wonderful thing. But there are many more ways to sort of tell people what you're doing.
Absolutely. Okay, so I would also like to know what citizen science projects you are engaged with at the moment.
Not as many as I would like, because EU citizen science has been keeping me so busy.
Can we just stop here and explain what EU citizen science
yes.
is for our audience?
Yes, absolutely. It's a 3-year project that lots of partners around Europe have been involved in, and it's a way to make a sort of community hub where anyone involved, whether it's researchers or members of the public or policymakers who want to know more, can come and talk to each other. So we're providing a giant platform full of resources, learning resources, where people might come and find out perhaps some technique or how to start a project. We're building all these collections together, and part of it is all these little short courses. which is what I've been doing.
Okay. In the meanwhile, I am just trying to, let me share my screen again. And I'm just showing this platform to the audience. Now we are at our web page, and we included this EU citizen science platform. It is here.
I've been looking at your starter kit to see what resources I should upload to the platform myself.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah, collaboration here.
Yeah, this is the platform you are mentioning. So this is basically a knowledge hub about citizen science.
Yes.
And the meeting
exactly.
point for researchers and citizens, and also a collection of good practices of examples that have been successful in the previous years. And as the audience can see, it is also in Hungarian. So yeah, do you have any experience with citizen science projects that were running in multiple countries? So were they conducted in English, or did you have to translate some of the tasks, the results? So what is a good strategy for that?
Oh yeah, language is a big barrier really to lots of people in citizen science. Almost all of it is in English. And my boss had a wonderful idea to set up a translation service where people could voluntarily translate each other's citizen science materials. And he put me in charge of this, and I went and talked to the translation department at UCL. They gave me lots of fantastic resources, but what I was missing was the software knowledge to make it into an attractive interface. So yes, if you're making a citizen science project, you do need that software knowledge as well. It is time consuming, definitely. I didn't get very many volunteers. EU citizen science have done a lot better. They do have more technical know-how than I do as an individual. And they have created a place where if you want to translate a course or one of the resources into Hungarian, then you can do so. But at the moment, I don't think there's any sort of international centralized effort to do this. There's lots of goodwill. Lots of individual projects do invite their volunteers to make translations, and sometimes they do that really successfully. But at the moment, it's all bit by bit. And yes, the more citizen science in languages that are not English, the better.
Absolutely, and I think that the EU Citizen Science Platform does a great job, but that is definitely something that we should be working on. I am just sharing the poll with you. I hope so. Yeah, let's see where you are watching us from. No, yeah. So thank you very much for sharing your location with us. This is just a fun exercise, and we just love to know where you are from. And I would like to thank you, Alice, for your very interesting and thought-provoking presentation. And I hope that we will continue this discussion later. And I would also like to thank the audience today. Thank you for your active participation, and thank you very much for your participation in the previous sessions as well. This was the last webinar for this year. All the webinars, all the sessions we have had so far can be rewatched on YouTube and on our website. And we are going to continue in January. See you then, and have a great rest of the day and rest of the year. Goodbye, and see you in January.